Imagine living under a dictatorship so oppressive that even speaking your mind could lead to torture, imprisonment, or death. This was the Dominican Republic under Rafael Trujillo, a regime that ruled with fear, violence, and absolute control. Yet, amid this tyranny, three brave sisters, Minerva, Maria Teresa, and Patria Mirabal, decided to resist. Their courage and sacrifice didn't just inspire a nation, it helped end Trujillo's reign of terror. This is their story. Let's go back to the 1930s, a time when Trujillo's dictatorship solidified its grip on the Dominican Republic. The Mirabal sisters were born into a middle-class family in Ojo de Agua. They lived a seemingly idyllic life with education, opportunity, and strong family ties. But as Trujillo's rule grew increasingly brutal, their world began to change. Trujillo was no ordinary dictator. His regime blended charm and cruelty, presenting itself as modern and progressive, while systematically silencing dissent. Beneath his public persona was a man who manipulated power to fulfill his own ambitions, rigging elections, silencing opponents, and committing mass atrocities. In 1937, he ordered the massacre of thousands of Haitians and Dominicans of Haitian descent, an event that left an indelible mark on the sisters as teenagers.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more topics you love.
The Mirabals, especially Minerva, began to notice how deeply Trujillo's rule affected everyone. Minerva, the second oldest sister, was fiercely intelligent and independent. She wanted to become a lawyer, an audacious dream for a woman at the time. However, when Minerva caught Trujillo's attention at a social event, she refused his advances, setting off a chain of events that would change the course of her family's life. Trujillo was not used to being denied. His retaliation against the Mirabals was swift and severe. The sisters' father was arrested and tortured, their property was seized, and Minerva was barred from continuing her education. But instead of breaking their spirit, Trujillo's actions galvanized the Mirabals into resistance. They refused to live in fear, even as the stakes grew higher. Here's where things get really fascinating. The Mirabal sisters weren't just brave, they were strategic. Along with their husbands, they formed the 14th of June movement, named after a failed coup attempt. They weren't soldiers or politicians, but they understood the power of grassroots organizing. They distributed anti-Trujillo pamphlets, coordinated resistance cells, and gathered weapons and supplies for an eventual uprising. Their code name, Las Mariposas, the butterflies, became a symbol of hope, but their actions came with immense risks. In a regime where even whispering dissent could lead to imprisonment, the Mirabals openly challenged Trujillo's rule. They were arrested multiple times, tortured and harassed, but they never wavered. Their resilience inspired countless others to join the resistance, creating a ripple effect that Trujillo could no longer ignore. This brings us to the chilling climax of their story. On November 25, 1960, the sisters were traveling to visit their imprisoned husbands. They never made it back. Trujillo's henchmen ambushed them on a remote road, brutally murdering them and their driver. The regime staged it as an accident, but the truth quickly spread. The Mirabals had been assassinated, and their deaths ignited a firestorm of outrage. At this point, you might be wondering, why did their deaths matter so much? After all, Trujillo had killed thousands before them. What made the Mirabal sisters' story so different? it was their humanity. The sisters weren't abstract figures or faceless victims. They were mothers, wives, daughters, and sisters. Their story struck a nerve because it showed the personal cost of tyranny. Their courage became a rallying cry, proving that even the most oppressive regimes can't silence the human spirit. Their deaths also exposed the fragility of Trujillo's rule. Just 6 months later, Trujillo was assassinated by a group of dissidents, many of whom had been inspired by the Mirabales. His regime crumbled and the Dominican Republic began its slow journey toward democracy. Today, the Mirabal sisters are remembered as national heroes. Their faces appear on Dominican currency, and their story has been immortalized in books, films, and monuments. November 25, the anniversary of their assassination, is now observed as the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, a testament to their enduring legacy. But here's the real question. What can we learn from their story? The Mirabal sisters remind us that resistance isn't just about grand gestures. It's about persistence, courage, and unity. They showed us that even in the darkest times, ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things. So, I want you to think about this. What injustices exist in your world today? And what would it take for you to stand up against them? The Mirabals weren't superheroes. They were people just like you and me. Their story proves that change is possible when we refuse to accept the status quo. This is why their legacy matters, not just for the Dominican Republic, but for all of us. Their fight for justice continues to inspire movements around the world, reminding us that the battle against oppression is never over. It's up to us to carry their spirit forward. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Let's honor the courage of Las Mariposas by taking action in our own lives, standing up for what's right, and never forgetting the power of ordinary people to change history. Together, we can keep their legacy alive. The story of the Mirabal sisters doesn't end with their tragic deaths or even with the fall of Rafael Trujillo. Their legacy continues to ripple through history, shaping conversations about justice, equality, and resistance. Let's dive deeper into how their courage transformed not only the Dominican Republic, but also the global fight for human rights. After the Mirabal sisters were assassinated, their sacrifice became a symbol of the cost of freedom. In the Dominican Republic, their story galvanized a population that had grown weary of Trujillo's oppressive rule. People who had previously feared speaking out began to organize. The sisters' deaths highlighted the brutality of the regime in a way that no propaganda could cover up. They showed the world what was at stake in the Dominican Republic, a battle not just for political freedom, but for the dignity and humanity of every citizen. What's remarkable is how their story transcended borders. When the United Nations established the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women in 1999, they chose November 25, the day the sisters were murdered, to honor their memory. This wasn't just a symbolic gesture, it was a global recognition of the ongoing struggle against gender-based violence, a fight that continues to this day. Now, let's think critically about this for a moment. Why does a story like this resonate so deeply across cultures and generations? It's because the Mirabal sisters embodied something universal: the desire for justice, the strength of familial bonds, and the courage to fight for what's right, even in the face of insurmountable odds. These are values that transcend time and place. But here's another layer to consider. The Mirables didn't just fight a dictator, they fought a culture of silence and complicity. Trujillo's regime was built on fear, but also on the willingness of people to look the other way. The sisters' activism forced their fellow citizens to confront uncomfortable truths. Are we complicit in injustice when we remain silent? Are we responsible for the suffering of others when we fail to act? These are questions that remain as relevant today as they were in 1960. Fast forward to the present, and the Mirabal sisters' legacy continues to inspire new generations. In the Dominican Republic, their hometown of Salcedo has become a living monument to their courage. The Mirabal family home has been transformed into a museum, preserving their story for visitors from around the world. Their lives are taught in schools, and their faces are celebrated in public art. The sisters are not just historical figures. They are part of the Dominican identity, but their influence goes far beyond national borders. Feminist movements around the world have embraced the symbol of Las Mariposas, using their story as a rallying cry against gender-based violence. Every November 25, activists take to the streets to demand justice for women who have been silenced, abused, or killed. The Mirabals' legacy reminds us that the fight for women's rights is a fight for human rights. So let's bring this back to you. What does this story mean for your life? How can we honor the Mirabal sisters in our daily actions? One way is by refusing to be silent in the face of injustice. Whether it's standing up against discrimination in your community, supporting survivors of violence, or amplifying the voices of the marginalized, every action matters. The sisters didn't wait for someone else to lead the fight. They stepped forward, even when it cost them everything. The legacy of the Mirabal sisters doesn't just reside in history books or annual commemorations. It lives on through every individual and movement inspired by their bravery. Their story challenges us to reflect on the ongoing struggles for justice, equality, and human rights. It also reminds us of the transformative power of ordinary people who dare to defy extraordinary odds. As we move forward, it's important to think about the interconnectedness of struggles worldwide. The Mirabal sisters weren't just fighting Trujillo's dictatorship. They were pushing back against a larger system of oppression that valued power over people, control over freedom, and fear over hope. Their actions resonate with other historical movements, from civil rights campaigns in the United States to anti-apartheid efforts in South Africa. Each of these struggles is a thread in the broader tapestry of humanity's fight for dignity and justice. Let's consider the lessons their story offers us today. First, the power of collective action. The Mirabal sisters didn't act alone. They were part of a movement, a network of individuals who believed in the possibility of change. This is a crucial reminder for us. No one achieves meaningful progress in isolation. Whether we're addressing systemic injustice, environmental crises, or inequality, collaboration and solidarity are essential. But collective action starts with individual courage. The sisters' journey began with a single act of defiance, Minerva's refusal to submit to Trujillo's advances. It grew as they found strength in each other and in their community. This highlights another key lesson. Courage is contagious. When one person stands up, it inspires others to do the same. Change often starts small, but it can snowball into something far greater than anyone imagined. And then there's the importance of storytelling. The Mirabal sisters' legacy has been preserved through the voices of their family members, the writings of historians, and the actions of activists. Their story is a powerful tool for education and empowerment. It teaches us that we must never underestimate the value of sharing our experiences, whether they're stories of struggle, resilience, or triumph. Every story has the potential to inspire someone, somewhere, to take action. Now let's take this to a personal level. What untold stories exist in your own life or your family's history? How might those stories shape the way you see the world? The Mirabal sisters remind us that our personal histories are deeply intertwined with broader social and political movements. Understanding where we come from can help us better understand our role in shaping the future. Here's a challenge for you. Take time to uncover the hidden stories in your life. Talk to your family members, learn about the struggles they've faced, and think about how those experiences connect to larger patterns in history. You might discover stories of resilience, courage, or quiet acts of defiance that have shaped who you are. And once you uncover those stories, don't keep them to yourself. Share them, celebrate them, and use them to inspire others. Finally, the Mirabal sisters remind us of the importance of hope. Even in the face of unimaginable oppression, they believed in the possibility of a better future. Their actions were rooted in hope, not just for themselves, but for their children, their community, and their country. In a world that often feels overwhelmed by challenges, hope is a radical and necessary act. It's what keeps us moving forward, even when the odds seem insurmountable. As we wrap up this story, I want to leave you with a call to action. The Mirabal sisters gave their lives for a cause they believed in. Their sacrifice reminds us that every one of us has the power to make a difference. It doesn't have to be on the scale of toppling a dictatorship. It can be as simple as standing up for a friend, speaking out against injustice, or supporting a cause that matters to you. Their story is a reminder that history is not just something that happens to us. It's something we create. Every choice we make, every action we take, contributes to the story of our time. So, what kind of story do you want to be part of? How will you use your voice, your actions, and your courage to shape the world around you? The Mirabal sisters showed us that change is possible, but it requires both vision and action. Their legacy is a challenge to all of us. To be brave in the face of adversity, to stand up for what's right, and to believe that a better world is not only possible, it's worth fighting for.